Hey fans, did you know that Dash is the only digital auction platform built specifically for professional sports teams and their fan bases? It is also your place to score your favorite hockey team's most authentic memorabilia and game day experiences. Dash powers the auctions for your favorite AHL, ECHL, SPHL, NAHL, and USHL hockey clubs, plus many more across sports. Get in on the bidding now by texting DASH to 66866 or visit thesendbin.net and click on the word auctions in the upper right corner to find out the latest hockey auctions. Dash, making sports bidding so much easier in the digital age. This episode of the In the Corners podcast is sponsored by Sporfy, the sports video platform that allows you to instantly capture, replay, and share your favorite game highlights, all without having to film. For more information, visit sporfy.com or download the mobile app from the Google Play Store or the App Store.
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Heyo. This is the In the Corners podcast for Monday, November 30th, 2020. Welcome to the good ship In the Corners for episode number 93. My name is CC Hawkley.
And I'm Sean O'Brien.
Thank you for tuning in to let me try that again. Thank you for tuning in with us. That's not good. I'm stumbling out of the gate here with my words and everything. I'll blame the turkey. Speaking of which, I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Everyone who's listening in the United States, and for those listening outside the United States, happy Monday, I guess. No, but seriously, hopefully everyone here in the U.S. had a great Thanksgiving. Everyone outside the U.S., happy Monday to you. Hope the weekend was good.
And I just want to say, I personally am thankful that CC is here this afternoon. He turned down an offer to be the Denver Broncos starting quarterback, opting instead to be here for the In the Corners podcast.
That's correct. I can thank wide receiver Kendall Hinton for that. Elevated from the practice squad to be the Denver Broncos starting quarterback today. We're recording on Sunday, so yeah.
Speaking of opting out of play, let's talk about the ECHL here for just a minute.
Sure. Yeah.
So the North Division of the ECHL pretty much decided that they were not going to take part in the ECHL's kind of two-part revamped season that's coming up for 2021. And we're an AHL podcast here, but we want to talk about what that opt-out of the North Division means in terms of the AHL.
Yes.
And my take on it is, well, it doesn't mean anything great, but I also don't think it's a massive dagger to the hopes of fans having an AHL season. And here's why. ECHL commish Ryan Creelan pushed teams to have a decision at that date. That was their cutoff date for opting out. Now, was that ideal? Probably not, as with an ever-changing situation and more time to see how case rates and a vaccine panned out, a different decision could have been made. Now, why did the ECHL stick to such an early date? No, I have no idea. But the AHL has taken basically the opposite approach. Scott Howson continues to kick the can further down the calendar in what appears to be an attempt to salvage a shorter season with as many teams as possible. He seems incredibly hesitant to do what Creelan did here, and that's put a date on the calendar and say yes or no by today. Mm-hmm. Personally, I think Howson played this better, but I understand the difference in their situations and that the ECHL has enough teams and markets that can realistically play now and is going to opt for getting games in and a season started, whereas the AHL is not.
Right. And you make a lot of good points there, Sean. It's really problematic as well with all of these kind of edicts and mandates that states are coming down with. Pennsylvania and New York, they house a number of AHL squads. And so the fact that you've got these city and state governments saying that you can't have, you can't have gatherings over X amount of people. And that includes at sporting events and arenas. You look at Santa Clara County, they just passed down, a measure that basically restricts the San Francisco 49ers of the NFL from playing two of their home games in December. So it's like, where are they going to practice and where are they going to play those scheduled home games? The AHL is going to have a similar problem, kicking the can down the road to February. But like you said, the North Division, back to that initial topic, the ECHL North Division, they opting out, like you said, it's not going to have a direct impact per se on the AHL, but I do think that these state government, passed mandates and statutes, well, they're not statutes, but they're, governmental mandates saying, you can't gather, you can't have sporting events, you can't have this many people in one place. It's going to be problematic for the AHL moving forward in those northeastern states for sure.
Yeah, and until we see widespread vaccination and more plans coming forward, which again is not impossible by St. Patrick's Day, I don't think. I still think there's a chance for an AHL season, but I think if the AHL teams had to make a decision the same day the ECHL North Division teams did, we would see a similar result, but they don't. Right.
And unlike the ECHL, who is starting in December, or at least it's a staggered start, that was the initial plan, and that still is the plan, except there's the December start date for number 13 of teams. Boy, again, can't talk today. I blame the turkey. 13 teams, staggered start, December 11th, and then you've got the remaining teams left that are playing. All of the North Division and 2 of the South Division teams have decided to opt out this season, but November 30th, tomorrow, today, if you're listening on Monday, that is the cutoff date for teams to opt out. So that's really a make or break scenario. And so by the time listeners and viewers are going to be, digesting this podcast, ECHL season may be in jeopardy. So who knows? But I digress, because we've got our second part of the Atlantic Division signings and re-signings preview. And here we go. We're starting off with Bridgeport, and we're starting off with a player that, boy, when Sean and I were talking about this on our messaging, back and forth, private messaging, Sean was ready for this, and I'm just going to let him, take the floor and chomp at the bit for Mr. Josh Ho-Sang.
Starting off hot here. 16 games played in 1920 for the Sound Tigers, 6 with the Rampage with a .763 point shares. He did not play enough games to earn a percentile rank or a depth chart grade. Talent-wise, Josh Ho-Sang has a top-tier NHL toolbox on offense. His speed, edge work, vision, puck skills, etc. are all very, very good. His passing accuracy is still occasionally off, but those, where was that one going, moments are starting to fade. I still think he tries to create tap-in SportsCenter top 10 style goals instead of shooting from a good area too often, and he'll go 3 or 4 game stretches without having a single shot on goal. That's gotten better as he's developed, but it still needs to be a focus because he has a very good shot. He's a skater with a 14% career average shot that needs to be putting more rubber on the net than the 1.1 shots per game he averaged over the last 2 seasons in the AHL. His defensive awareness and effort are coming along, and many, but not all, of the bad turnovers and lazy efforts he's made in the past seem to be finding their way out of his game. There are still those moments where he tries to do too much with the puck in the defensive zone, but they're becoming rare. Unfortunately, I don't think it's talent that holds Josh Ho-Sang back. And while he's outspoken and has a personality amid the sea of get pucks deep, 110% effort kind of robots out there, which I greatly appreciate, that outspokenness has caused problems for him with Hockey Canada, among others. And his attitude his attitude problems aren't new. And while some of being outspoken and have a personality will always overlap with quote unquote attitude problems because that's hockey culture, Josh Ho-Sang's are far from 2 overlapping circles in that Venn diagram and go all the way back to youth hockey when he was playing under 16 with the Toronto Marlboros with Connor McDavid. He outscored McDavid as a kid and was almost cut from that team because of attitude problems. I want you to think about how bad of an attitude you have to have as a 16-year-old to outscore Connor McDavid and be this close to getting cut. Like, coaches who coach 16 under kids expect you to be a pain, but to be that good and be that big a pain, that says something. It also says something that your attitude has to be really, really bad when you are getting loaned from your AHL team when you put up a 53-point pace in the AHL. He's long been said to work hard when he wants to, and that's it. Now, I'm hoping that bus ride to San Antonio gave him some time to reevaluate, because head coach Drew Bannister said that he fell in line. He worked hard and he did what was asked of him. Now, that's only 6 games. We can all smile and play nice over short periods of time. As a lifelong Buffalo Bills fan, my in-laws are Jets season ticket holders for the last decade plus. I know we can all smile and play nice for a short stretch. I do hope that Josh Ho-Sang has finally sorted out whatever is going inside that head of his, and that trip to San Antonio woke him up, because he's very talented. Let's not mistake that. And he's entertaining to watch. And you can be fun and have a personality in hockey and not be labeled as a problem. I'm rooting for him to figure it out for sure, but as of right now, he's probably not going to get into the NHL this next season. And I'd like to see him stay in Bridgeport the whole time, but I could also see him having to go elsewhere as well.
Yeah, and it's, you know, just him being such a lauded prospect for the New York Islanders organization, and to have him not necessarily fall from grace, as it were, because he's still playing at AHL Bridgeport. You know, he's not down with the Worcester Railers or anything, but, you know, it just goes to show, like you said, how much of an attitude and maybe a much needed attitude adjustment can take you, you know, from the AHL level up to the NHL level. So speaking of going from the AHL to the NHL level and trying to break that cusp, you know, a guy that the Islanders organization acquired this offseason, October 11th, Islanders traded defenseman Kyle Burrows to the Colorado Avalanche organization in exchange for our next guy, AJ Greer. And AJ Greer, he's one of those guys that, you know, was right on the cusp. He'd get the call up for a cup of coffee with the Avalanche, but he just could never stick with the club, and he could never, you know, stay up at the NHL level. So his stats: 47 games played in 1920, 2.84 points share, good for the 77th percentile on a per game basis, with a second line forward grade in Sean O'Brien's model. He does have trouble translating his AHL success to NHL success, like I mentioned. That seems to stem mostly from his skating, though. In the AHL, rather, however, he's kind of a jack of all trades. He's got the sandpaper you want from a guy his size. He has the puck skills, but they aren't consistently demonstrated, and they don't have that wow factor to them. And regardless, he is a good second line player and a good signing for a team that desperately need offense from its forwards. Like I said, they parted ways. Bridgeport, their captain, Kyle Burrows, is heading to play more than likely with the Colorado Eagles. And yeah, I think it's a good trade for both clubs, you know, with the Avalanche, you know, the Eagles rather, needing another solid defenseman and good leadership core in the locker room, you know, and AJ Greer gets another chance to make a crack at the NHL level with the Islanders.
Moving on to the namesake of Name That Wotherspoon, or rather 50% of that namesake, is Parker Wotherspoon, sticking in Bridgeport again. 62 games played in 1920, 2.67 point shares, good for the 49th percentile on a per game basis, and a third pair defenseman grade. I honestly thought he got buried a little bit on the depth chart. He's getting a little bit of an opportunity now that the blue line is cleared ahead of him. But he's a good skater, especially with good defensive skating ability. He has offensive upside to his game, but it's inconsistent, and it makes me wonder if the flashes of it are caused by his talent emerging, him maybe not being utilized correctly, random chance, or just something else. Overall, I think he's certainly good enough to be an okay number 2, number 3 AHL defenseman should he get some help from forwards in Bridgeport this season, because he and Bridgeport as a whole did not get a lot of offense from its forwards, and it needed to.
Do you think that the loss of Burrows is going to affect Parker Wotherspoon in a more direct way or an indirect way?
I mean, seeing your captain walk out the door is always going to affect you indirectly. Mm-hmm. But I also think the player that they got back in AJ Greer, him being a skilled forward and being able to put pucks in the net, I mean, that definitely helps. As a defenseman, when you're breaking the puck out of the zone, you know, you're looking to find forwards in transition. And if those forwards never do anything with the puck, there's only so much you can do. He is someone who I think could join the rush a little bit more, but I question whether or not he has the toolkit to really make the use of that. I think he's, like I said, better utilized as the number 2, number 3 that kind of doesn't, try and use what is decent skating to his advantage, because I don't think that he quite has that level of top end speed where if he gets caught deep, he's not getting back.
Gotcha.
But I do think that it will affect him. How exactly is difficult to say, because there's going to be that leadership loss as well as a gain in talented forwards. So does that wash out?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's tough to say. Yeah, that's a good point. Sticking with defensemen, though, let's talk about Sebastian Aho. Not the guy down in Carolina, obviously, because he's a defenseman. But 49 games played in 2019-20, 2.53 points shares, good for the 59th percentile on a per game basis, and a second pair defenseman grade in the model. It's still baffling to me that 2 prominent hockey players can have the exact same first and last name, like I, mentioned just, 15 seconds ago, but they're from different countries. They play different positions and they have very different skill sets. And here we are. You got 2 Sebastian Ahos, and one of them's with the Hurricanes and one of them's with the Islanders organization down in Bridgeport. So this Sebastian Aho is a very good skater whom he's got a good offensive toolbox, but not one that blows you away. He has good puck skills and vision, but his skating is what enables him to be a top pairing defenseman in the AHL. Again, on the topic of defensemen, still a big loss with Kyle Burrows and everything. So I think both Aho and Wotherspoon, they kind of will probably have to step up, at least in their defensive duties, with Burrows heading over to the Colorado Avalanche organization.
And I think clearing that way in the depth chart will definitely help Wotherspoon as well.
Okay.
Just because, like I said, I think he was underutilized, and just there were guys in front of him that were roughly as good as him, but because they kept getting the ice time that someone has to get that ice time. I think that was a detriment to him. Whereas Aho, as I talked about with Wotherspoon, I don't think he's a good enough skater to be joining the rush that often. Aho is. I think Aho is a very good skater, and that's what makes him what he is as a player. I don't think his hands, his puck handling, his passing is what makes him have offensive impact. It's his skating. And him joining the rush and getting in there, being dynamic in the offensive zone, to me, that's what separates him from someone like Parker Wotherspoon.
Gotcha. Well, it looks like we're sticking with defensemen. Sean, you want to talk about Grant Hutton a little bit?
Yeah, a lot of defensemen for this team getting re-signed here. Grant Hutton, 55 games played in 1920, 2.81 point shares, good for the 59th percentile on a per game basis, and a second pair defenseman grade. Another good skater for a big guy. He's certainly capable of bringing that big point shot threat on the power play, but his puck skills and vision keep him from being that true power play quarterback and more just the threat of the shot. However, his size and skating allow him to make up for that when it's utilized in the right way, by giving him a workload that focuses less on finding open teammates in the zone and more on skating with the puck and executing passes on predetermined breakouts, as well as finding space for shooting lanes for his NHL caliber shot velocity. He's someone that if you put him in the right space and ask him to do things that are very much in his skill set, firing heavy shots into shooting lanes, or where he knows where the play is supposed to go next, short support breakouts, or going back and forth on a power play, as opposed to you have to find the open guy, he's going to be successful.
And, I noticed a kind of a common thing with the last, 3 defensemen we talked about that, are coming back to Bridgeport in 2021. Hutton's a 59th percentile guy. Aho's a 59th percentile guy. And then you've got Wotherspoon, who's also a 49th percentile guy. You've got 3 of these returning defensemen that are kind of, middling, middle of the road kind of guys. And so, just as a group, again, I know I'm kind of, belaboring this point here, but with your captain and Kyle Burrows heading out to the Colorado Eagles, it's like you're going to have to step up as a defensive unit. And I know, again, I don't want to beat that dead horse, but it's just something that everything's going to have to do. But we'll get to our 4th and final defenseman after this. But first, let's talk about a top AHL player in Austin Zarnick. 32 games played in 1920, 3.57 point share, good for the 97th percentile on a per game basis, for the Sean O'Brien analytic model. Scored 12 power play points, which is a huge boost for a team that scored the second fewest power play goals last season. It was bad. Zarnick has good but not great puck skills. He's an above average skater with better speed than edge work. He's got good instincts in the offensive zone. He's a good forechecker, reliably getting pressure on puck carriers. In my viewings of his tape, my biggest criticism was that he was too easily pushed outside on rushes instead of attacking the middle, and he attacked one-on-one instead of utilizing his teammates. If he wants to make the offense he creates at the AHL level to translate better to the NHL, he'll need to work on that. It's a trite saying, but hockey's a team sport, and you can't do everything on your own. You got to be aggressive, but you also got to rely on your teammates a little bit in that regard.
And I think too, Bridgeport has realized that some of their shortcomings for not having that offensive depth at forward, and they found those in those free agent signings. Austin Zarnick is a very good signing. AJ Greer is another very good signing. Those are guys that are going to help their forward group put pucks in the net. And I think that's a big thing that they missed last year, along with Zarnick is good on the power play, which theirs was bad.
Yeah, not good. Not good on a special teams level. I haven't seen the exact figures, but I do remember Bridgeport. Obviously, they were towards the bottom of the standings in the Atlantic last year, so it makes sense that their special teams were at the bottom as well. So, as I alluded to earlier, last but not least, our fourth defenseman signing for Bridgeport, signing or re-signing. Sean, tell us a little bit about Mitchell Van de Sample.
Played 70 games in 18-19 with 6.45 point shares, good for the 76th percentile on a per game basis, and a first pair defenseman grade. If you're wondering why I said 18-19, he did not play in 19-20. He hurt his arm in Isles training camp last year, and I don't know what happened to his arm. Injury reports like that are not something that's just, handed out at the AHL level.
Upper body injury.
He missed the whole season. What I can say from watching, him last season and reading some interesting scouting reports on him, he is a very good skater. He has puck skills that jump out when you watch him. His speed, his vision, his ability to process the game at that speed make him very dangerous on breakouts and on the rush. His defensive game will never earn him favors with coaches or fans, but he does enough to not be in the doghouse too often with that. He was sorely missed last season for a team that needed to do better in transition and generate offense in transition. And hopefully he's healthy enough to return and be the player he was in 18-19. Good news for him is an arm injury should not affect his ability to skate or process the game. Again, I don't know exactly what's wrong with him, but hopefully it doesn't, have lingering effects on his passing or shooting ability.
And, with him being in the 76th percentile back in 18-19, suffering an injury that keeps you out all year, I don't care if it's an upper body or a lower body injury, you hope that you don't lose a step. You hope that, spending that year off still, being able to, go through the motions and work out as much as you can, go through physical therapy and things like that. Do you see Van de Sample, with the defensive shuffle, and again, with Burrows moving on and getting traded to Colorado, do you see him being able, if he stays healthy, to be consistently a first pairing defenseman for Bridgeport next season? I
think so. Okay. I definitely think he will get the opportunity to be a first pairing defenseman. I don't think he makes the Isles, but with Devin Taves moving on from the Islanders, also going to Colorado, that's it's not impossible, but it would surprise me. I would say if you find a player that is a carbon copy of his 18-19 self, he should be their number one defenseman. I would definitely be trying to pair him with someone who is more defensively responsible, who's a little bit more physical and able to kind of play in zone and be a little more cautious, because he's going to jump up and join the rush, and he has the speed and the edge work to get back, but his in zone defense and his defending of the neutral zone, it's not terrible, but it's definitely not the best. But his ability to create that offense in transition, to jump on transition pucks, to really create offense in zone, that's something that they need. And he definitely has those skills. Whether he puts them all together after a year off, remains to be seen. It wouldn't shock me if he starts a little slow, just getting back into the speed and the pace of the game after sitting out for a year, because that will always come back to bite you. But he showed to be very reliable processing the game at a good speed, and especially matching his processing speed with the speed of his feet. So I think he will be that guy for Bridgeport if maybe not right away, but give him, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to kind of get back into the speed of the game. And I think he'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have a little rink rust, coming back from a year off. And especially with how odd the season has been and everything like that, I'm sure that, it may take him a little bit longer, just because of, COVID and maybe not getting ice time in certain places. So, but we'll see. We'll definitely see and keep an eye on if Bridgeport can, move up the standings with a better defensive presence now that, Van de Sompel's coming back. So anyway, one team down, 3 teams to go today for the show. We've also got 2 guests coming up a little bit later, but now we're going to be talking about the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. And here's the guy that I'm familiar with, played in the Pacific Division last year. Actually, the Central Division. Forgive me. I'm just so used to every team that the Eagles played being from the Pacific Division. But Derrick Pouliot, playing with the San Antonio Rampage last season, now signed with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms.
58 games played in 1920 with 3.82 point shares. Good for the 74th percentile on a per game basis and a second pair defenseman grade. For me, he falls into that category of too good for the AHL, but not good enough for the NHL kind of player. At the AHL level, he's going to be an offensive heavy top pair defenseman who is not great in his own zone, but his overall impact is going to be a boost because he creates offense joining the rush and his ability to really be a quarterback in an AHL power play. He's something the Phantoms desperately need on the power play after being, let me check my notes here, very bad.
Yeah. If there was a bright spot for the San Antonio Rampage last season, I would say Derrick Pouliot was one of them because, you look at, I'm looking at the AHL Daily Report right now, and Derrick Pouliot, he was 3rd in the league in power play assists with 22. So, and I know we talked about Iowa. Well, actually, have we haven't really talked about Iowa. We talked about Sam Moss joining Springfield, but Sam Moss and Brendan Mennel, 35 and 23 power play assists. Their power play was off the charts, but 3rd on that list, Derrick Pouliot, 22 power play assists and 25 total power play points. That's good for 4th in the league. Obviously, most of those were assists, but man, if anybody can bring some much needed relief or some much needed quarterbacking rather to an abysmal Lehigh Valley Phantoms power play, it can be Derrick Pouliot. So that's a huge get for the Phantoms for sure.
That does seem to be the theme of this half of the Atlantic Division is, where did your power play go last year?
Somewhere in the ocean, probably. Since they're so close to there. That's the best thing I can think of. When you're in the Atlantic Division, you're so close there. Aptly named. Next up, Alex Lyon. Yes, the goaltender, 32 games played in 1920 with a 0.188 goals saved above average per 60 minutes and a 0.21 point share per 60. That's good for 55th percentile on the per game basis as a rotational starter grade. What feels like the only starting goalie in Phantoms history at this point. He was the guy in net for that, 5 overtime game against the Charlotte Checkers. I believe it was him.
That sounds right.
Yes. Yeah. I saw the wheels turn a little bit in processing, but yes, I believe he was in net for that. So yeah, it feels like he's been the only starter in Phantoms history. He'll be the starter again for a 5th straight year in the Phantoms organization, which is pretty bananas in this day and age, I must say. The AHL is a developmental league. So you see guys, you just 5 years in a row. It's unprecedented. It's unheard of. He's been remarkably consistent though, as a guy who's always just outside the top tier of AHL goalies, but he's a dependable starter who's going to give you above average results in net, even when the team around him is not so good. Like we talked about, even whether it's on 5-on-5 special teams, he does his best to keep his team in the game for sure.
Yeah, it's really remarkable to see someone that even when the Phantoms have been good, his numbers are about the same as even when the Phantoms are very, very bad as a team. And that's not something you find, that kind of consistency across goaltenders. I will say too, I don't usually do this, but I will disagree with how the model rates him. I think he was a little bit better than 55th percentile on a per game basis and a rotational starter grade. I would have had him higher than that in my own, personal rankings, but I do not question the math. It just runs on its own. I simply am the one that hits the enter bar.
Right. Yeah. Like you always say on Twitter, it is only a model.
It's only a model.
It is only a model. But I mean, yeah, sometimes it can be a little misleading. And I was a little surprised when, just, seeing 55th percentile, I'm like, really? But, like you said, sometimes if your defense in front of you isn't good, if the team in front of you isn't good, then that can really affect, who you are as a goaltender, and it can really affect your statistics. And it doesn't matter if the talent behind the net, if your defense is shoddy or something like that, then yeah,
I will say too, because there are so few starting goaltenders compared to skaters in the league, that like how tight those percentiles are in goaltending is incredible. Like if he was a 0.21 point shares per 60, 0.188 goals saved above average per 60. If you move those up even a little bit, he's going to jump into the 70th percentile, no problem. But because that's how close it is. Like you don't have to jump too much in terms of output to really make a big leap in percentile, because like I said, they're we're slicing into, the thousandth place in a lot of those.
Right. Yeah. And it's so just to have a limited sample size, as it were. I mean, with goaltenders, it's a little bit different than when you're grading forwards and defensemen. So I totally get that.
Yep.
Speaking
and
of
there's always the voodoo.
There's always the voodoo, the goaltending voodoo that you do so well. Okay, no, I'm good. Sorry. Had a little moment there. But moving on, speaking of defensemen, speaking of shoring that up in front of Alex Lyon, Logan Day, is he going to be a good or not so good addition, Sean?
So when I first looked up Logan Day, it was the signing, and said, are we going to talk about him on the show? I went to the 1920 model, 48 games played in 1920 with 0.77 point shares, good for the 15th percentile on a per game basis, and a replacement level grade. However, in 1819, in 64 games played, Logan Day had 6.3 point shares, good for the 80th percentile on a per game basis, and a first pairing defenseman grade. So what happened? Will the real Logan Day please stand up?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it had to do with regression from his teammates. Joe Gambardella shot a 30% clip in 1819. Josh Curry at a 20% clip. Those aren't sustainable. Plus, Dave Gust and Patrick Russell didn't come back to Bakersfield. Plus, 42 games of average goaltending from Shane Starrett in 1819 became 41 games of, below average goaltending from Stuart Skinner in 1920. All of that for a defenseman who has good physicality, average at best AHL puck skills, and below average skating ability says to me he's very much not a number one AHL defenseman, but he's not an ECHLer either. I think if Lehigh Valley puts him in as a number 4, pairs him with a good partner, and manages his matchups well, I think at the end of the season they could be happy with his play. But he is someone who is not nearly as bad as last season was, but not nearly as good as 18-19 was.
Now, Sean, okay, so there's obviously a pretty large disparity between last season and 2 seasons ago regarding Logan Day. Now, was there anything specific that really stuck out to you in regards to why there was such a big drop off?
I mean, like I said, I think a lot of it was just his teammates. Like when you pass the puck up to, Joe Gambardella on a breakout, and he goes down and takes what is a low percentage shot, but it goes in for you. That's a cheapo assist. And like I said, he shot a 30% shooting percentage in 18-19. Joe Gambardella is not a 30% shooter. That was always going to come back to earth. Same with Josh Curry. Josh Curry shot a 20% shooting percentage in 18-19. He's a good shooter, but he's not 20% good. Those numbers were always going to come back down. So those were the guys he's passing the puck up to, the one he's setting up in the neutral zone, the ones who are retrieving his dump ins. Like when those guys' shooting percentages goes down, your assists dry up. And that's what happened. Like he's still a decent shooter, but the assists to his teammates who just couldn't finish plays like they did the year before, I think is really what killed it. That being said, I still do not think that he is a number one based on talent. He's not a good skater. His puck skills are okay-ish, but he's physical. He's got a good net front defensive ability. And those all carried over when watching his 18-19 games and his 19-20. I watched a lot of tape on him because I was very curious as to how he got here. And that's mostly what I saw. I saw the same guy both seasons, more or less, a little bit more polished in 18-19 than 19-20 in some areas, but overall, same guy. But his teammates did not perform as well. And that was something that was predictable, I think.
Right. I apologize for making you have to repeat all that. No. Yeah. It just baffled me just how you could go in one season from the 80th percentile to the 15th percentile. And, like you explained it so well, I mean, there's going to be a little bit of a drop off when, your teammates are putting out, such good numbers. And like you said, and, like we encounter with the PDO analytics statistic, when you have a team that is performing so well and has got such good puck luck, as it were, and, and your PDO is, 110%, 120%, reminds me of the, Cincinnati Cyclones back in the ECHL when I covered them a couple seasons ago. Mm-hmm. And they were just so damn good during the regular season. And then it came into the playoffs and you get to the second round against the Walleye, and boom, you're out in 5 games. It's like there's going to be on an individual and a team level. I totally understand that there's going to be a bit of a drop back down to earth and a drop back down to, drop back down to earth. I mean, there's no better way to put it. When you're doing so well and you're 80th percentile, I guess just seeing the 65% difference, it's jarring. It's the most staggered and, abrupt difference that we've seen, I think, in most of the signings that we've covered between the North and Atlantic Division so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So there you have it. Lehigh Valley Phantoms got a few notable signings from them. And now we've got our first guest of the day coming onto the show. He is no stranger to the In the Corners podcast. We've already had him on once this offseason to talk about the Charlotte Checkers, and we are inviting him back on. He is the Sin Bin's Charlotte Checkers correspondent. Go figure. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Joseph Wills. Joseph, how you doing, brother?
Good. How are you all doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
You all hear me okay?
Yep. Hearing you perfectly fine. Absolutely.
Great.
So good to see your face. Good to hear your voice, my friend. Thanks for saying hi when you and your lovely wife, Tony, decided to come by Colorado and take a pit stop here in Denver. And it was good to meet you guys in person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Colorado's beautiful. Probably our 3-year plan. So be prepared.
Yes. I'm ready for you. Come on. I'm ready for you. I don't know if the state's ready for you, but I'm ready for you. So
probably not. No,
but that's okay. That's okay. So Joseph, welcome to the program once again. We're going to talk about some of the signings and re-signings of the Charlotte Checkers. Obviously a brand new NHL affiliation with the Florida Panthers. So the roster is going to just look completely different in a lot of instances than it did last year. So first and foremost, a guy that I'm very familiar with from his time playing with the Idaho Steelheads, Philippe Derosier. We're going to talk about him a little bit. Sean is going to give some statistics in regards to his analytics model. And then Joseph will get your point of view on him.
Yeah. So let's start with the basics here. 29 games played in 1920 with .353 goals saved above average per 60 and a .27 point shares per 60. Good for the 89th percentile on a per game basis and a starter grade. He's a goalie who's gained a lot of consistency in 1920, but still leaves a fair amount to be desired in my viewings. He's a good but not great set of skills where nothing really stands out as an elite trait or an elite skill. He moves well, tracks the puck well, good lateral and explosive movements, but nothing that stands out that says, I'm an NHL goalie. His 2 biggest concerns for me are his rebound control, which borders on bad, and his focus. He gives up a lot of juicy rebounds, and that's probably the biggest factor from keeping him from getting NHL looks, because you can't kick pucks into the slot off of low percentage point shots in the NHL. You're going to get mauled. I don't care if you're Dominik Hasek. You can't do that. And his focus concerns me because it seems like he is an absolute lock each and every game for letting in a goal that's maybe not capital B bad, but one of those when you look back at the film and say, yeah, he probably should have had that one. Now, for Charlotte in the upcoming season, I'd say his floor is still pretty high. He's at worst a competent AHL starter. I don't think he ever sniffs the Bastion Memorial Award for best AHL goaltender, but he should still be someone who is not the blame at the end of the season should Charlotte not make the playoffs.
And just chime in. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
Again, it's a guy that I'm very familiar with his time in Idaho. I just wanted to chime in. He has the capability to kind of bookend what Sean says. He has the capability to put up, great performances and memorable performances, which I think, obviously isn't here or there in regards to consistency and things like that. But, you look back to December 4th, 2019, and he had a 62 save performance on 63 shots with the Springfield Thunderbirds. I almost said Springfield Falcons. That was a different franchise, but you put up moments like that and you really you put yourself on the map. Now, granted, did Springfield's defense do him any favors that game? Probably not. Sean with the big head shake. No, they did not. But, it reminds me, there's one specific instance, and then I'll yield the floor to Joseph to talk about Derosier. But when the Steelheads were in the playoffs, 2018 first round Kelly Cup playoffs, they were facing the Allen Americans. They had Thomas Scholl in goal, and he started to crumble a little bit. So they brought Philippe Derosier in game. They brought him in relief in game 2, but then he started games 3 through 7. So they were down 3-0 in a series for the second time in the 30 plus years in ECHL history. Derosier put the team on his back and just, had an outstanding 4-1 record, coming back from a 3-0 deficit, winning 4 games straight. Just looking at the statistics here, like I said, 4-1. Sean's favorite statistic of goals against average, 1.84, save percentage of 0.943. I mean, he just went off. So that's my that's my passionate take on Derosier and the fact that when it comes to those big games, he can really come in clutch.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think the one thing that's going to hinder him going at least to the NHL is just looking at the Panthers roster. You have this guy, I don't know, Sergei Bobrovsky, I think is his name. He's pretty good. I think they're on the hook for him for 10 years, Then you have, Montembeault, who's, I'm guessing, the solidified backup now. He may transition back and forth to the AHL, but I think he's pretty much got a permanent NHL roster. And looking at the Panthers roster, the Checkers roster, they now have 3 goaltenders. So, how do you handle that rotation? Maybe one of them goes down to Greenville for a little bit.
I'm having a bit of a brain fart, Joseph. Who are the other 2 goaltenders in Sean's roster?
I know Bednard was one of them. I could look it up real quick, but I can't remember who the third one was. But I'm pretty sure Desoria will stay up there.
Florida just drafted a goaltender too, pretty high if I remember right. Maybe
they drafted Spencer Knight in the first round last year. I don't think he has a contract yet, or at least if he does, he's still in juniors. But I know he's not on the roster.
Yeah, he's not going to be in the AHL next year, but he's another one too. The Panthers have a surprising number of bodies in that goaltending pipeline. But I don't think that they think that Derosier is one of them. He seems to be the guy that they're now thinking of as more of a mentor or an AHL crutch, which is surprising because he's like 25. I mean, he's certainly not old enough to be put out to pasture as a goaltender. It's not like he's 28 and they're like, oh, he's just never going to make it. Like, he absolutely could still develop to be an NHL goalie, but where I see him right now, I just don't think that's it. But for Charlotte, I think he's going to be fine. Now, should the NHL's expanded, taxi squad for the, no holds barred goofy rules 2021 season take place, maybe Charlotte doesn't even get to hold on to him. I have no idea. But it does seem like he is slated to be their number 1 starter, and I think that should be fine for them. Now, if he gets called up to Florida, Godspeed, because that defense is bad.
And checking on elite prospects there, it is Bednard and Derosier that are currently listed on the Charlotte Checkers roster. So that's your goaltending tandem. And, it's kind of the same problem, just to kind of wrap this up with a nice little bow. It's kind of the same problem Derosier had in the Dallas, Texas, Idaho affiliation tree. You just had too many goaltenders. His entry-level contract was up. Landon Bow, like I said, Thomas Scholl was kind of on the AHL level, bumping back and forth. In Dallas, they had Jake Ottinger, they had Colton Point. It was just a crowded system. So hopefully he gets to stand out enough to where he can make a difference and stick with the Charlotte organization if and when this AHL season should be played. So there you go. You got Derosier as the first signing little summary that we have there. And the next one, we've got Ryan Lomberg. Let me, introduce him a little bit. 21 games played in 1920 with a 2.56 point share. Good for the 98th percentile on the per game basis. Obviously a top AHL player grade. Now, he seems to realize that he can't score from the penalty box. So Lomberg is making the most out of a solid toolbox that includes good puck skills and smooth skating with an impressive top gear. He was limited to 21 games, like I mentioned. He got injured last year, so he was a Calgary call-up. He took on a more do-it-all role for the Heat last season in Stockton. He was killing penalties efficiently. He was a solid first forechecker and displaying dynamic abilities on offense. He's a good pickup for Charlotte for sure. Should he continue rather to stay out of the box on the score on the score sheet, Florida, they should come calling for a look, definitely, especially with the 98th percentile grade. Sean, your thoughts on Lomberg real quick before we bounce it over to Joseph again.
Yeah, he seems to have found anger management classes because he good. Like, he has an NHL toolbox and is starting to put it together. But his biggest problem was like, he's spending half the game in the ice, the other half in the penalty box. And like, I understand sticking up for your teammates and playing physically, but like, he was taking dumb ones. He was fighting guys for no reason. Like, you can't do that and be that talented. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere at the AHL level. So I'm happy to see him take the steps forward he did. He also played with good line mates, a lot of time with Austin Zarnick, who we talked about earlier. So we'll see what he ends up with in Charlotte, but he's someone who I feel like could drive lesser line mates to success at the AHL level.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I mean, kind of to mimic the point, I mean, he's a good, I don't want to say veteran presence, but, I think he's 26 or so. AHL, he's getting there. But another person that Charlotte got, which reminds me a little bit of Lomberg, is Scott Wilson, and left-handed forward, or I'm sorry, left wing, left-handed shot. Really veteran presence, played with Pittsburgh, won some cups, played with Detroit, the Sabres, and now Charlotte just picked him up as well. So I think, with those two, definitely a lot of potential there, for Charlotte. And I think both of them will probably stay in the Charlotte system. But I think it was Lomberg when he was in Calgary, 7 games, 0 points, 14 penalty minutes. So I think he's probably going to just end up staying in Charlotte for a while. That's my guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah, his temper came out when he went to Calgary, but I also get the impression too, big call up, you want to do something to stand out, drop the gloves and go. It's one way to do it.
Yeah,
that's for
sure. And the Wild Wild West, I mean, Calgary, Wild West town, they're famous for the Stampede and everything up there. Maybe he felt like he needed to, you feel lucky, punk. And like you said, just a little bit of wanting to make a big splash and start a fight. But yeah, we'll see how he goes out in the East and see how he does, out there for sure. Next player up on the docket, last but not least, we'll see if Joseph has anybody else that he has his eye on in the signings and re-signings column. But Mason Marchman, coming from the Toronto Marlies, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is actually when I saw the list. This is the one I got most excited about because I saw him a lot in Charlotte when the Marlies were in town. and most notably the Calder Cup playoffs in 2019 in that Eastern Conference final.
Sure.
And Marchman had what was ended up being the game-winning goal in that game one. When Toronto won 2-1, of course, we all know how that series and the playoffs played out. But yeah, Marchman's big presence. I mean, very, very experienced player. Skating's a little suspect, but you kind of grow into that. But now I'm very excited to see Marchman in Charlotte.
Sean, let's hear a few statistics on him.
30 combined games played in 1920 with 1.95 combined point shares, good for the 78th percentile on a per game basis and a second line grade. He's a big dude, 6'4", 220. He's not someone you're going to easily miss on the ice. And that size advantage comes with some pretty good puck skills to go along with it. Good net front presence, can also be valuable in transition despite being not a very good skater in my viewing. It's improving, but I still think it holds him back. But when you're a guy that's 6'4", 220, the number one thing that's always going to be an area to work on is skating, because guys that are that big rarely fly down the ice. Regardless, I think he's going to be a good depth scorer for the Checkers, and he brings that sandpaper a lot, but doesn't rack up the PIMs. So I think that's a good move for them. Anytime you can add a physical presence at net front that doesn't end up in the penalty box, can put pucks in the net, good second line, third line scoring depth, always a good move.
Yeah, and like Joseph was saying, he got to see Marchman firsthand, and that's something different. It's one thing to see a guy on film, and really this is why scouts like to see a guy in person and really get the eye test going on. There is something to be said about advanced analytics, of course, Sean, but there is also something to be said about what you see in a guy, and what literally, in an in-game situation in person, there's a different kind of synergy there. And so for Joseph to really get a firsthand look at Marchman and that Eastern Conference Finals, like he talked about, and how he operated on the ice, I think that's kind of a big thing to really notice how someone's proclivities really work in kind of an in-person eye test sort of way, for sure.
Yeah. It's the old saying, you hate to play against a player, but you love, you hate them when you're playing against them, but you love them when they're on your team. Yeah.
Joseph, you lent me the book Blood Feud, again with the Avalanche and the Red Wings, and Claude Lemieux is that guy, whether Yes, Sean's a big Claude Lemieux fan, as you could hear by that, just disgusted. Oh,
yeah.
There are not
hate
too
him
many
as a
hockey
rival.
players. There are not too many hockey players that I've grown up watching that if I ever saw him at a grocery store, I would fight. I don't care that he would kick the crap out of me. I would fight him. Corey Perry is another.
Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one, Corey Perry. Yes, I would. I don't know if I would necessarily. I am not a fighter. I don't think I fought since my stepbrother took a swing at me in junior high, and I ducked him out, and it wasn't really much of a fight. I ran away. So, but anyway, I digress. We've got a little bit more time here. I'm looking at the list here on the sin bin, in regards to signings and re-signings. Is there really anybody else that you wanted to talk about in regards to signings, Joseph?
There were a couple from from the 2019 draft. It looks like that they signed contracts back in October. Matthew Wedman, and I believe the other one is Greg. I'm probably going to mess this name up. Marilis.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, and Matt was a 7th rounder. Greg was a 6th rounder, and they were both captains at their WHL level. About a point per game players. Again, this is going to be their first professional season, so let's see if they stay in Charlotte or if they're down there in Greenville. And either way, if it's drive across town or drive an hour and a half down to Greenville, I'm sure I'll see both of them on the ice.
Yeah, and they both signed 1-year AHL contracts. I think Charlotte is one of those teams that doesn't like to divulge whether those contracts are one-way or two-way at the AHL level. But yeah, if they did sign, especially as 6th and 7th round draft picks, you would think that they signed some two-way deals, if not to get some playing time and everything. So, both signed on October 19th, oddly enough. So very very fitting that you decided to bring both of them up, but there you go.
Right. Yeah, they're kind of a package deal. Drafted the same day and signed the same day, so it makes sense.
Hey, there's a lot of symmetry going on there. I can appreciate that. So,
I think they may have
go ahead, Sean.
I think they may have both originally been on the list of guys I wanted to talk about, and then I found that I could not find film of them, so they mysteriously dropped off the list.
Understood.
Yeah, I was like, well, they're 6th and 7th round picks. I have no idea what kind of players they are. So
right, it's more of the potential factor at this point, but time will tell.
Yeah, might as well give them a shot. And like you said, if anything, they can go down to Greenville, a team that, as far as we know, hasn't opted out yet at the ECHL level, and hopefully everyone can get to play this season in a safe manner. So we'll see. But Joseph, where can people follow you on the Twitters?
I'm at Sinbin Checkers on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. And where can people see your work?
We
kind of know, but
well, right, yeah, the sinbin.net. Got a couple articles in the pipeline. Not gonna divulge too much information, but certainly stuff that'll make you think a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it, and I'm excited about it. So we'll definitely see a 4 seasons of hockey encompassed all in one wonderful article. Right. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Anyway, enough of the inside jokes. Joseph Wills, Sinbin, Charlotte Checkers correspondent. Joseph, thank you again for coming on the show, and we really appreciate you taking time out to join us, man.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Anytime.
Yeah, thanks, man. We'll see you and talk to you soon, brother.
All right, sounds good. Bye.
All right, bye. Once again, Joseph Wills, AHL Charlotte Checkers correspondent for the Sinbin.net. So yes, 3 teams down and 1 to go. We've got Corey queued up now, so we're just trucking along, man. And we're gonna have plenty of time for the quiz. We weren't sure if we're gonna do that, but like I said, next guest, he covers the Hershey Bears for the Sinbin.net, but he's also got mainly his own blog at the Bears Nation Hockey, and I'll let him give that address because I'm spacing on it and I don't have it pulled up right here. Hang on a sec. I'll do that right now. So BearsHockeyNation.wordpress.com, Hershey Bears Hockey Nation. I see stuff on the Sinbin so much that I forgot the URL. So without any further ado, Hershey Bears correspondent Corey Schwartz. Corey, good to have you on the program, my man.
Hey, Cece, how are you?
Good. Here's my co-host, Sean O'Brien. Sean, Corey Schwartz.
Hi, Corey. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
Nice seeing you.
Hey, thanks for coming on the program, man. If there's anyone that I have been very excited to talk to from our AHL staff and off-season editions, it is Corey, because my God, has he put out so many articles on the Sinbin.net, and he's just killing it. And of course, the Capitals organization, the Hershey Bears organization have so many signings. They just one after another, just boom, 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 boom. So we got a fair amount to talk about, Corey. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was in the same boat as you. I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit more quiet this summer, and then all of a sudden it was just signing after signing after signing. Seemingly all off season long. You think to yourself, okay, is this it? Is this what's how the roster? Even now, I'm sort of kind of sitting, my hands on the keyboard, so to speak, and still absolutely ready to go for it. Certainly.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed for a while there that you're just cranking out 2 or 3 articles a week, and it was just like, when are these signings going to slow down? But I digress. Let's get right to it. We'll talk about Paul Ledoux. 48 games played in 1920 with a 4.15 point share. That's good for the 92nd percentile on a per game basis, rather. First pairing defenseman grade in Mr. Sean O'Brien's analytic model. I'll have to send you the link. It's a pretty impressive thing, Corey, but he's a gifted shooter who joins the rush, pushing the pace on the weak side during breakouts. He's better finishing chances than he is trying to drive play in the offensive zone, but his playmaking vision isn't great, and his skating is, I would say, below average. He's not a dynamic offensive presence on the cycle, but he still manages to generate shots from the home plate area in front of the net, rather. Mostly on the power play and off the rush. For a 6'1", 205-pound defenseman, he's often muscled off the puck along the wall. He retrieves dump-ins and he kind of loses battles in front of the net sometimes. He defends the neutral zone well. He makes good passes off the D zone, off of D zone turnover recoveries, but regularly cannot beat, F1, on the set breakouts. He's good as a number 3 defenseman with the ability to blast pucks on the half wall during power plays. But personally, if I was coaching, I wouldn't ask much more of him. So Corey, what are some of your thoughts on Paul Ledoux?
Well, it's interesting with Ledoux. He was certainly introduced in Washington's new signings on Twitter. I believe he had a post done specifically for him, acting as though he may be a fit with the Capitals as one of their bottom 6. Addressing a need of what they might possibly have to fill in there. But of course, the Capitals are definitely overloaded on defensemen at this point, and underloaded on forwards, which, makes for an interesting debate of will they sign more guys, or is someone from Hershey, really going to make the jump, to stick up at forward? And that's another topic altogether. But like you said, there's a lot to be excited about with Ledoux if he were to come down to Hershey. The Bears have an excellent crop of young defensemen that, I think offensively he would, help to round out there, certainly. But at this point I've been looking at him as he's probably going to be one of the extras up in Washington there, certainly. And if he does come to Hershey, that's great. Obviously the Capitals have the space, they could send him down, certainly. At this point though, like you said, he generates a lot of offense, which the Bears certainly have a lot of back on the defensive end there. But like you said, there's a lot to be excited about with him for sure.
Sean, anything to add?
I think he's someone too that I don't know if he's going to make the Capitals as like a black ace or a 7th defenseman. He could, but I think some of his skills are better utilized at the AHL level. Like I said, I think if he was a better skater, you would definitely see him as a clear-cut Capitals black ace. We'll see what expanded taxi squads in this no holds barred NHL 21 season look like. So maybe that's where he ends up. But I think he's someone who the Bears should look to manage well as a number 3 or number 4 defenseman for them. I think they are kind of loaded at the power play quarterback kind of position. But, when call-ups and things like that happen, or should someone like Nardella get injured, I think he's a good spot duty for that big blast off the half wall.
Okay. Well, we've all chimed in on him, so moving on. Let's talk about a guy that signed, Washington re-signed him, right winger Daniel Sprong on September 18th, 2-year, one-way NHL contract, which I found kind of odd, but sometimes those NHL clubs, they've got plans and everything. But Sean, tell us a little bit about the statistics and what you noticed about Mr. Sprong.
44 combined games played in 1920 with 2.62 combined point shares, good for the 66th percentile on a per game basis and a second line forward grade. I've been watching Sprong play since his junior days in Charlottetown with the Islanders in the QMJHL. His game is very clearly an offensive based one. He's a high end skater, very good NHL shot, and he's capable of making tight passes and creating offense with his vision. His defense and physicality have driven many a coach to lose their voice the next day. And he started to realize that he's not going to sustain NHL call-ups without developing his two-way game a little bit. So it's a work in progress more than we've seen in previous years. Still, he's very entertaining to watch and should aid Hershey in moving on from what was a pretty average offensive output last season. He's someone that definitely belongs on their top power play unit as a trigger man.
Corey, your thoughts?
Well, Sprong's guy, I haven't been watching him as long as you have, Sean, but I can tell you just from a limited experience in the 2017-18 season, Sprong was a pain in the neck when the Bears played against him. It was obviously a tough season for the Bears back then, but it just seemed like he was the guy that always had the puck on his stick, and he always had a perfect shot. You would be like, oh, man, Sprong scored on us again type of thing. So he was a guy that, you always had to look out for, and when the Bears traded for him, it was one of those ones where, especially we had a good storyline towards the end of the season last year where, former Penguin Daniel Sprong dressing with Hershey and former Bear Riley Barber dressing with Wilkes-Barre for a game there. But, he came in and he did fantastic in what was a very short stint with Hershey, of course. But, certainly competed for Washington time well. I know him and Brian Pinho I believe, really teamed up well in Capitals camp before they returned to the bubble. They're certainly, looking to make a strong impression. The, signing of Sprong to a one-way contract there, leaves some doubt as to if he'll be in Hershey or in Washington, just like Paula do there as well. But, he was fantastic last year. He'd love to get another season of him. It fills a very big need for the Bears at right wing. That was a spot that they, struggled to fill all season long. With as much good talent as they had, Sprong seemed to be the last big weapon that the Bears really needed. And it's just a shame we didn't really get to see more of him for Hershey last year.
Well, and we'll see if he gets some times with the Bears. I mean, especially with a one-way contract, he'll definitely have to clear waivers if he's sent down. But yeah, we'll definitely see. But moving on from a offensive presence to a defenseman in Cameron Schilling, signed by the Capitals on October 10th to a 1-year, 2-way NHL contract. So this man will not have to clear waivers if he is sent down to the Bears. Schilling, 54 games played in 1920 with a 3.88 point share. Good for the 80th percentile on a per game basis. And a per game basis, man, I have the hardest time. My mind just wants to say basement for some reason. On a per game basis, just cracking that first pair defenseman grade, he returns to Hershey, where he played 210 games from 2011 to 2015. So yeah, I remember reading that in your article, Corey. Welcome back, Cameron Schilling. He certainly meets the requirements for veteran status, but he looks to have the fire in him. 2 words describe his on-ice play. The first is dynamic. Cameron Schilling would not be a blue line gargoyle in the offensive zone. He won't be, rather, and he won't be the last man on the rush either. He's going to jump in, he's going to join the rush, join the cycle, and he makes dynamic plays on the offensive side of the puck, despite the fact that he's never really been a stellar skater and he doesn't have that top-end speed. He's still very mobile and he's got good edge work. The second word I would use to describe him is aggressive. Schilling is physical and aggressively pressures the puck carriers in the defensive zone. Quite a few times when he wasn't responsible for the puck carry in the defensive zone, he still was, still exhibited that aggressiveness and that physicality. He communicates well with his teammates to adjust to shifts by the offense during the cycle, but there were a few times where his aggressive pursuit of the puck carrier in his own zone led to some blown coverages, as you would expect, with guys on an island in the slot. So regardless, he is a lot of fun to watch, and he is a good signing for Hershey, who needs more of a dynamic offense from its blue line, from its packed blue line, as Corey said. But Corey, Cameron Schilling returning to the Bears after, good number of seasons away. Your thoughts on this?
Really excited about it, to be honest with you. It's prodigal son, returning after a really great stint in Hershey. He was one of the few younger guys that left the Bears after the 2014-15 season, where there was a massive shift in just overall personnel for the Bears. And it was easy to forget, in a sense, that he left just because the Bears managed to turn it around so well. But, he comes back as, not only a veteran who, his numbers have gotten better. I mean, I know he hit more than 20 points each season since he departed Hershey. I think it was a milestone I don't believe he hit with the Bears in his initial stint, but he's got a leadership role in, I believe, with the Moose, and jumping around different organizations. Really established there as the kind of veteran presence guy that I think he's going to mesh well on the blue line for the Bears. That's becoming a lot younger this year. I think that's something it's been important to know with the Bears here for next season, is they lost a lot of their players that have been with them since they ran to the Calder Cup Finals in 2016. Which is as sad to, acknowledges the reality here nowadays. So, really excited to see what he brings to, the Bears. I think having him, especially as the new younger core of, Bobby Nardella, Alex Alexiev, Martin Faravari, become the group there, that he's going to be sort of the veteran presence back there, rounding things out, which I think is, so key. I think it's just, you can't say enough about having that presence back there for them, for sure.
Sean, anything to add?
It's going to be interesting to see who Hershey puts on its power play units, because there's another one who I think is a very good power play quarterback. But Hershey seems very determined to give those roles. I mean, Nardella for sure, but they also seem very eager to give Alexiev and others those roles where I don't feel like they're quite good fits for them. Whereas I would say someone like Ledoux or like Cameron Schilling is a much clearer fit for a power play role than some of the others that have been given that ice time. Fervari is another one where I don't think that he belongs on the power play just yet.
Well, and speaking of the power play, we're kind of doing a little foreshadowing here going into our next player, which is Brian Pino. And Sean, once again, very passionate about this this topic in our private messaging. So yet again, I yield the floor to my cohort.
Brian Pino had 62 games played in 1920 with 4.18 point shares, good for the 82nd percentile on a per game basis and a first line forward grade. Pino really seemed to get buried at times by a Bears team that, while it lacks, clear-cut, bona fide NHLers, it has a lot of quality, like in-between players and AHL forwards on the roster, like Pilon, Maie, Scarbosa, etc. And now with Sprong coming in, Pino's skating has improved, but I don't think it's ever going to be a strength of his. Even as now, it's just good enough. He's a good two-way player and does a bit of everything. He isn't terribly physical, but can win board battles. His puck skills are never going to make Sports Center, but they get the job done. He's a good but not great forechecker, and he skates hard to back check when he's on the ice. I really like him to get more ice time, especially on the power play. Fun fact, since the 2015-16 season, only 2 players have scored at least 20 goals in the AHL and have 0 power play goals in that season. One of them is Warren Fogle. The other, Brian Pino. Another fun fact, the Bears power play was 23rd in the AHL last season. Yes, Daniels, Sprong, and Carr are going to boost that. So would not playing 2 defensemen on every unit or actually using the 1-3-1 formation properly. But Brian Pino should be stapled at minimum to your second unit as its triggerman on the half wall, which leads me to go with free Brian Pino.
There you go. Hashtag free Brian Pino. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sean has been eagerly chomping at the bit for the last hour plus to want to do that. It's funny. He showed me that before we started recording, and he actually ripped the hashtag in half. So he had to go back and print it off and everything. But all hashtags aside, Corey, what are your thoughts on Brian Pino re-signing with the Capitals and ultimately the Hershey Bears?
Oh, I love Brian Pino. I mean, what a success story from last season, to be honest. Like you said, no power play goals yet. He, his improvement from one season to the next, I mean, was just phenomenal. I mean, you think back to the first round series in 2019 against the Bridgeport Sound Tigers, in which Brian Pino's, scored in overtime to, in Game 5 to lift the Bears over the Sound Tigers in that series. Really seemed like the start of good things to come. I remember watching that game, and Zach Fish, the Bears radio voice, kept saying Brian Pino is going to score this goal. He's going to score this goal. It just seemed like it was going to happen. And sure enough, he, gets a little bit of a lucky, break with how the shot came off his stick, but, scored the goal. And then obviously the movement on the Bears lineup from that season to last year really enabled him to step up and I think have a bigger role than what he had previously. And he flew with it, give him a lot of credit. He worked really hard to make that happen. And, anytime you go, over doubling, I think almost tripling his point output from his rookie season to sophomore. I mean, you just can't say enough about how he's honed his game and really flew with the opportunity. And, if there had been, I believe obviously the Bears did award their, usual team awards, his most improved player from one year to the next was well-deserved, I think. And, it was really a secret weapon for the Bears. Like you said, the Bears don't have tons of what you would call bona fide NHL talent, but they have so much in-between talent that it makes them a hard team to play against because they have, 3-4 lines that can really bring it to you type of thing. And so as a, opposing team, you're always trying to defend which one of these guys is going to score that big goal next type of thing. I think that's the Bears, secret weapon in a sense.
The other thing too about Brian Pino is that you can't just blame that production on him being, pasted to the first line with Maie and Scarbosa and Pilon, because that's not what happened. He was playing mostly third line with a lot of Johnson Fallaby, a lot of Breck Leeson, a lot of those guys. He got some time on the wing on Maie's line, but not a lot. It's not like he was Zach Cassian, where Connor McDavid's, strapping him to his back and carrying him up the ice. That's not how he put 20 pucks home last year.
Yeah. And, talking about Brian Pino, to kind of shift gears a little bit and to go from one top line AHL forward to probably the most, if not one of the best AHL top forwards in the league. Definitely playing with, Milwaukee last season and really helping that team reach the top of the league standings in a guy, Daniel Carr. Again, he's just a great get by the Capitals organization to sign him on October 11th, or at least announce it on October 11th. Washington picking him up on a 1-year, 2-way deal. Sean, I'm going to defer to you again on this because, man, I mean, Daniel Carr is Daniel Carr, and he's amazing to talk about, and I know you're excited to talk about him. So take it away, my friend.
47 games played in 1920 with 6.23 point shares, good for the 99th percentile on a per game basis in a top AHL forward grade. Daniel Carr's game can be summed up very quickly. He's the anti-Sam Anas. Now, I don't say that to, disparage the name of Sam Anas, but Sam Anas wants to use his speed to create space outside, find razor-thin passing lanes across Royal Road or to the slot for his wings and defensemen to rip pucks on a moving goalie. Daniel Carr wants to play hockey in a phone booth. He wants to protect the puck down low, battle along the boards, break to the net and get tips, bang home rebounds, and set up others from dirty areas. He's not a bad skater, but he lacks that top gear to separate from defenders. But he's the best net front guy in the AHL, bar none. And he creates offense in those close quarters, as well as contributing off the rush. His instincts and ability to see moves ahead when reading the play are why he was the AHL MVP 2 years ago. Defensively, he shows good instincts in the neutral zone, covers the points pretty well, but he absolutely will cheat and exit the defensive zone early to push the pace if he sees maybe a 50-50 puck in the defensive zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one of the things I saw that, like you said, that really excited me about, his addition to the Bears is just a variety of ways he could score. There are times where he'll, be in front of the net, deflecting pucks, jamming home rebounds, as well as flying in off the rush, completing passing plays. He plays almost any situation and he seems to just have a handle on it. And fun fact is, a local resident Flyers fan also in my spare time, he actually played for Union College the same year that Shane Gostisbehere played and won a national championship with Union College in Philadelphia when they played in the final series there. So I was kind of amused to see that, kind of connection to them as well. But, one of the things that I think the Bears were lacking is just, exactly what Daniel Carr brings to the table. I think it's a really good communication between the Capitals and the Bears in terms of bringing that kind of scoring, just because, he's a guy that fits, not that the Bears were, overly lacking in that type of situation, but, just a guy that can, help finish more pucks to the back of the net and increase the scoring. I think it's just a little bit more what the Bears need to push them over the top, to be honest. And, his addition, I'm so excited about it, to be honest, just because he's, just going to bring just that little bit more that the Bears needed, I think, to put him over the top.
Absolutely, too. And he's another big power play guy where it was funny because I was watching Milwaukee's power play last night and this morning, seeing how they utilized him. And they seemed to utilize him on the perimeter more, which I was baffled by. Like, that's your net front guy on the 1-3-1. I don't know why you would put him anywhere else.
And it's crazy because Milwaukee, I was looking at it from an analytics perspective when the Bears signed him, is that, the Admirals were a good team in 2018-19. And then they just seem to take that, step up. And obviously you can't say it's exactly because they added Daniel Carr, but coming off of an MVP season and all that stuff, he certainly, helps to push them over the hump there in his own way. But like you said, with the power play, I think it'll be interesting to see how the Bears use him. Is the Bears are, I could honestly see them doing the same thing of putting him on the perimeter, just because the Bears aren't, as much of a team, like you said, even earlier, that gets it to the point and just throws down the net and try to make it work that way either. The Bears had a number of different looks. I can tell you just from a fan perspective, the power play hasn't been the, favorite thing all the time here, especially with, like you said, finishing 23rd in the league. Sometimes people get a little frustrated at it. I'm sure it's something they're consistently working at, and having that extra talent. I mean, you just can't say much more about having just that little bit extra to push you over the top. That's for sure.
Well, their power play was very frustrating to watch. I spent a lot of this past couple of days watching film on Daniel Carr and a lot of Brian Pinho and watching that power play, and it hurt me.
Yeah. Sean, again, in our private, conversations, he definitely was not shy to share that aspect about watching Hershey and watching them struggle on the power play. And free Brian Pinho. Yes. But just to chime in a little bit and, again, wrap it up in a nice little bow. Joseph Wills, our last guest that we had on talking about Charlotte, he mentioned getting to see Mason Marchman in person when the Marlies and the Checkers played in the Eastern Conference Finals a year ago, 2 seasons ago now. But, seeing Daniel Carr come in to Loveland, Colorado, and see them Admirals play against the Eagles back in March of 2020 feels like a year or 2 ago now. But to see how much of a game changer he can be is really impressive. And, with like you said, with a good Hershey squad, and to put him hopefully potentially on the power play and have him possibly make a difference. I mean, you could go lower, but I mean, free Brian Pinho and put Daniel Carr on the power play, and my God, you're going to score some goals. That's for sure. So, guys, you're probably a little more familiar with this, Sean having his fingers on the pulse of the Hershey Bears for as long as he did. And Corey, obviously you covering the team as closely as you do. Big news yesterday, or should I say on Saturday, the 28th, with a fan favorite, both on and off the ice, and Liam O'Brien. Goodbye to the Big Tuna. I just wanted to give the mics over to you guys and have your thoughts on, O'Brien coming over, Sean's cousin, by the way. Not really, but
all O'Briens are related.
All O'Briens are related, right? They're all coming from Ireland, but for Liam O'Brien to come over from Hershey to Colorado, I mean, it's kind of an end of an era in Hershey. And Sean, yeah, I'll yield the floor to you first, and then Corey can wrap it up for sure.
I mean, he was an outstanding defensive forward for them who moved the needle on offense as well. He was a fan favorite, and for sure a guy you could tell that was not just liked by fans, but by players in the locker room. I'm very sad to see him go, and I hope that cousin Liam gets on well in Colorado like he did in Hershey.
Yeah, like you said, it's still hard to put into words how the Bears are going to be without him, in a sense. If ever there was a guy that deserved to wear the captaincy on his jersey, I said in my, thank you post to him I wrote on Saturday, he deserved to wear it. I mean, the Bears have not utilized a traditional captaincy since Garrett Mitchell in 2017-18, of course. But, he was just the guy. Like, he is, his footprint is all over the community, in the locker room. He was always, you would watch the Facebook live streams of the players getting ready to come on the ice. He was always, front and center in all those broadcasts type of thing. And certainly is the true last holdout from the 2016 Calder Cup Finals team that was, just a really special squad to leave is just, a milestone in and of itself, because he was, such a great guy. You think back to that season and, him sticking up to the big bad Tom Sestito in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference semifinals there too. Certainly is one of the most memorable things I've seen, in the last few years watching the Bears here, certainly. So it's one where it's just really tough to see him go, because he's, such a figure in the community, and especially in a town like Hershey where, we know all of our legends' names from, 80 plus years here, certainly. So it certainly, speaks volumes to him as a person, as a player, really sad to see him go. I wish him all the best in Colorado, though. They're getting a gem. I don't know if they realize it just quite so much yet, but they're getting a gem. That's for sure.
Well, and definitely, with a guy that's played 6 seasons at the AHL level, and to be, still, I mean, like we talked about earlier, 26 years old at the AHL level is starting to get up there, I guess. I mean, he's definitely, he's put in a lot of miles. He's put in a lot of time at the AHL level. And so to have a veteran like that come into Colorado, from everything Corey, you said, from everything Sean said, he's aggressive. He comes up big in the moments that he needs to. And he's not afraid to be kind of a do-it-all sort of dude, both, like I said, on and off the ice. So yeah, we'll definitely talk, probably when we cover the Pacific Division, the Eagles and everything. We'll definitely talk more about him and what he can bring to the Eagles next season with, all of their amazing additions. I don't say amazing. I mean, they've made the Avalanche and the Eagles organization have done a lot of good things this offseason in additions and regarding departures and everything. They filled those holes accordingly. So yeah, we'll talk about that once we talk about the Pacific Division. But Corey, is there anything else that, I mean, we're going to have you on for the quiz here in a little bit, but is there any other situation, maybe talk about the goaltending? I know you brought that up a number of times in your articles on the Sin Bin and with the Hershey Bears Hockey Nation blog that you have. Did you want to touch on that a little bit before we go into the quiz?
Yeah, absolutely. The goaltending situation it's really interesting. I think the Bears and the Capitals have built some really good depth. And there was a question for, I think practically the, August resumption of the NHL all the way up until, the signing of Henrik Lundqvist, honestly, that, would there be a Bears goalie that would graduate? Would Vitek Vanacek graduate to the NHL level and get the shot that he hasn't received yet and, in my opinion, very much deserves to get a chance at? And, the Bears built some good depth. They seem to be building up some, options to utilize if that were the case. I mean, Hunter Shepard, can't say enough about how excited I am to see him hopefully get a shot in South Carolina here once their season opens up too, because he's, such a highly decorated college goaltender. I don't think you could find anybody, as decorated in terms of, his achievements and accomplishments. But, very much having to prove himself again, jumping from college to the professional ranks here too. And, Zach Fucale, obviously a guy who's been around the AHL and the ECHL a good bit too. Seemed to be going back and forth from the ECHL to the AHL. Another guy looking to prove his mettle. And then you obviously have Phoenix Copley, who, I'm not sure what his future is. Obviously, he's under contract for a couple of seasons, could be a player for, the Capitals to dangle with the expansion draft coming out here possibly. But, ultimately it proves, with the signing of Lundqvist that we're going to have Vanacek and Copley once again. And they're both fantastic guys, one of the top duos between goaltenders in the AHL. I think only Providence and Milwaukee actually had better goaltenders, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of tandems.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're both phenomenal guys, phenomenal people. We'll never complain about having both of them back for another season, certainly. And another subject I think is great to touch on is we were talking about defensemen a little bit. How about, and I'm blanking on his name all of a sudden as I'm trying to say it, Eddie Whitko. Eddie Whitko is who I was thinking of. Blanked on it for a second. His signing to an AHL deal and some of the departures, obviously we saw Tyler Lewington, Connor Hobbs, Colby Williams, a lot of what was considered the defensive depth for Hershey this past season departed, and Eddie Whitko got a new contract, which I thought was a pleasant surprise. He was a guy who was really impressive to me, and I hope he sticks as one of Hershey's top six, because he brings, a big physical element that I think the Bears have been lacking for, a couple of seasons. If there's one thing the Bears have been, you saw it with the Charlotte series a couple of years ago, where the Bears got run over a little bit by a, really tall, really strong team. And they didn't have Eddie Whitko back then, but, you think to yourself, would that have been a different series with his, massive presence on the blue line? And he was a guy that was so well liked by, Spencer Carberry and so many others that, he was hard to send down. They couldn't send him down because they liked the way he played so much. And, he chipped in 5 goals in a very limited stint for Hershey. I think it was below 25 games, if I'm not mistaken. Really excited about having him in the fold, and hopefully he gets a chance to, become a consistent part of the Bears defensive group next season.
Well, there you have it. Yeah, goaltending and then some to wrap up the Hershey Bears signings and re-signings coverage there. So, yeah, last 4 teams in the Atlantic Division, 2 divisions down, 2 to go. We're going to have 1 episode each for the Pacific Division and the Central Division. So stay tuned for that come December. But without further ado, last but not least, Sean doing the Mr. Burns, excellent Smithers, is starting to get ready for the quiz. And yes, he's going to be testing our knowledge on affiliations here, Corey. So I'll let him formally introduce it, though.
So as we all know, the ECHL, AHL, NHL affiliations have a relationship length that is typically Kardashian-esque. And that's for a number of reasons. AHL franchises move from one city or one owner to another city or another owner. They're bought by a parent club, or their parent club randomly ghosts them to start an affiliation with a team that's geographically further away. All these things happen. To celebrate that chaos, this quiz is called the Affiliation Shuffle. Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to give you a name of a current team name of an AHL franchise, and list 3 NHL or ECHL affiliates, and you're going to try and choose the team that was never affiliated with that AHL franchise. Note the important word there, franchise. Because teams move, and no, Art Modell, you cannot move a franchise and just retcon franchise history as you see fit. So if that's not clear, we'll work through an example here. If I said Binghamton Devils, and the options were Colorado Avalanche, Los Angeles Kings, or Arizona Coyotes, the correct answer is the Coyotes, as the Avs and Kings were affiliated with the Lowell Lock Monsters, who became the Lowell Devils, who are now the Binghamton Devils. Everybody with me?
Mm-hmm. So, okay, hold on. So what we have to do is we have to pick the team that wasn't affiliated or has never been affiliated with them.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you 3 teams. 2 of them are going to have past affiliations with at least one iteration of that franchise.
Okay. Okay.
And
I got
then
it now.
the other one won't.
Gotcha. Okay. So we have to pick the one that did not.
Correct.
I can do this. Okay.
All right. Corey, since you are the guest on the show, would you like to kick or receive?
I'll kick.
Cece, you were first up here.
Okay.
Your team is the Charlotte Checkers. Were they affiliated with the New York Islanders, the New Jersey Devils, or the Boston Bruins? Which one was not their affiliate?
So the Jersey Devils, the Islanders, or the Bruins, who were they not affiliated with? This is going to be tough. I didn't even do any research or anything because I wanted it to be tough. So, okay. Checkers, Devils, Islanders, Bruins. I'm going to say the New Jersey Devils. Final answer.
The New Jersey Devils from 1993 to 2006 were affiliated with the Charlotte Checkers as the Albany River Rats. The correct answer was the Boston Bruins.
See, and for some reason, I should have. Yeah, your jersey that gave it away, right? Not.
Corey, your team is the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. Were their ECHL affiliates the Pensacola Ice Pilots, the Indy Fuel, or the Stockton Thunder?
That's a tough one. I'd have to go with the Stockton Thunder. I think that's. I'm not an expert on ECHL affiliations. I may have been able to figure out the last one, but ECHL, I will go the Stockton Thunder on that one.
Is that your final answer?
Yes.
Unfortunately, they were affiliated with the Stockton Thunder for 2013 to 2015. The answer we were looking for was the Indy Fuel. They were the odd man out there.
Sean's making it hard for us, Corey.
Oh, yeah, this is a tough quiz, honestly.
Yep.
What were you saying,
Even
Sean?
that last one, I was guessing the Islanders on the last one. With an NHL to AHL seems pretty straightforward, but when you get to some of these, depth teams that have moved around a good chunk, it's hard to keep it all straight, honestly.
Yeah. Or even if you have like our next team that has never moved. Cece, you have the Hershey Bears.
Oh boy.
Which one of these was never their NHL affiliate? Is it the Detroit Red Wings, the New York Rangers, or the Quebec Nordiques?
Okay, say that again. Nordiques.
New York, Quebec Nordiques, Detroit Red Wings, New York Rangers, an NHL affiliate of the Hershey Bears.
I'm going to say Red Wings.
That is incorrect. The Detroit Red Wings were affiliated from 1957 to 1962. The answer we were looking for was the New York Rangers.
Corey, did you know that?
I would have guessed. I was actually going to guess them, to be honest, even though I wasn't positive. So he threw the Nordiques in there, and then I thought to myself, he's probably going to say because they became the Avalanche. That would be the part that ties them all together. But the Bears have had a ton of partial affiliations, multi-team affiliations. I was like, he's going to get me somewhere on that. I think, honestly, because the Bears have had so many. I mean, locally here, I can tell you that. One of the things a lot of folks hold on to is, the Bears and the Flyers used to be affiliated, for, it's their second longest affiliation, I believe. And, a lot of people that are Penguins fans here are like, oh, we can all support the Bears, no matter who we are, just because we're all local type of thing. But the Bears and the Penguins were affiliated at one point too, and won a Calder Cup technically under a joint affiliation in 1975. I think. It's I always tell people that, and always, no one knows the Bears and the have had so many different affiliations over the years. It's insane.
And while yes, it is true, I would have used the Quebec Nordiques via the Avalanche. They were also actually the Nordiques affiliate from 80 to 81.
See, that I didn't know, honestly.
Yeah, I had a feeling that, yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to show my hand too much because we still got some questions. So go ahead, Sean.
Corey, yours is the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. Was their ECHL affiliate never either the Wheeling Nailers, the Kalamazoo Wings, or the Brampton Beast? Who was not their ECHL affiliate?
I'm going to say the Wheeling Nailers.
Final answer.
I'll say final answer on that one.
Wheeling was their affiliate from 07 to 09 as the Philadelphia Phantoms. The answer we were looking for was the Brampton Beast.
See, that's a tough one. The Phantoms have such a, crazy history of affiliates as well that, I was thinking to myself, there's no way it's Wheeling because it's, they're, they've been seemingly, part of the Pittsburgh chain for so many years too. I'm just thinking to myself, there's no way, but, goes to show how much I know, I suppose.
You know what? We're all getting stumped here because, like you said, these Northeastern affiliations, they can get a little convoluted sometimes, apparently. And you have these 1 or 2 year deals. Yeah, Sean knows. But yeah, we're both 0 for 2, Corey. So, Sean, let's just go the third round. And gosh, you might be the one that's given the victory speech if we can't get any, Sean.
Third and final round here. Cece, your team is the San Antonio Rampage. Which one of these was not their affiliate? Is it the Arizona Coyotes, the Detroit Red Wings, or the Minnesota Wild?
Good golly. Good golly. I'm going to go with Arizona.
Final answer.
Final answer.
The Arizona Coyotes were their affiliate from 2002 to 2005. The answer we were looking for was the Minnesota Wild, never an affiliate of the San Antonio Rampage.
See, I was just going against my gut, and I'm like, okay, Arizona. Corey, here's your chance.
Corey, for the win, your team is the Chicago Wolves. Which one of these was never their ECHL affiliate? Is it the Rapid City Rush, the Kalamazoo Wings, or the Gwinnett Gladiators?
This is a tough one, man. I'm telling you. Can you give me the options again?
The Rapid City Rush, the Kalamazoo Wings, or the Gwinnett Gladiators?
I think you're going to trip me up on this one, but I'm going to say the Gladiators.
Final answer.
Yes.
Unfortunately, no. The Gwinnett Gladiators were their affiliate from 2004 to 2011. The answer we were looking for is the Rapid City Rush.
Yeah.
I was not expecting to get to a 0-0 tiebreaker, but I do have a tie-breaking question that cannot be wrong. So we're going to play closest to the pin rules. So if you have something to write down there with, or use your phone as a writing aid, you're going to write down for me how many different NHL franchises have the Hershey Bears been affiliated with? Closest to the correct answer gets it.
Are we doing prices right? Closest without going over?
Nope. Closest period.
Closest to the pin. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Corey, you got yours written down?
Written down, no. I'm still trying to kind of guess it in my head here.
Okay.
Am I supposed to hold up my phone when I have it done or something like that?
Yes. Cece, are you ready?
I am ready. I'll go ahead and dive in first. We're going to do 12.
Cece says 12 different NHL franchises. Corey, what do you have?
I'm going to go with, you can hopefully see it, 15.
Yes.
15. Cece is going to win. The correct answer is 8. They are the Boston Bruins 3 different times, the Red Wings, Penguins, Sabres, Capitals, Quebec Nordiques / Avalanche, Flyers, and Lightning.
Wow. Hershey gets around.
Yeah.
Seems like they have even more than that sometimes, honestly. I think I'm just thinking of the, multiple times that, they've been affiliated with a, certain team, or, maybe even just the one question you threw out there kind of put me in doubt, honestly.
Yeah, the Bruins 3 separate times they were the Bruins affiliate, which filled a lot of their early history. Then they were the Capitals affiliate twice, and then they were the Nordiques, which are still technically the Avalanche, which makes that just one.
See, that's it.
Franchise.
Yep.
Franchise is the key word there. Okay.
Well, Sean,
Stacey,
I've got. Oh, go ahead.
As our winner, you have 30 untimed seconds of whatever you would like to rant about, as well as getting to lead our outro. Cece, the floor is yours.
Well, Sean, I'm going to surprise you a little bit here. I know that you've been willing to chomp at the bit in regards to something that's near and dear to your heart, which is Thanksgiving sides and a whole map that somebody put on social media. So, Sean, plot twist, I'm deferring to you, and you, sir, have the floor for 30 seconds. Take it away.
That feels fair. I just want to say as a prelude, this was the map that came out of our country's representation during November that drove me the most insane. Mm-hmm. Thanksgiving side dishes are an important part of the Thanksgiving Day tradition. But a disturbing number of you do not seem to understand, A, what a Thanksgiving side dish actually is, or B, what a good Thanksgiving side dish is. Like, acceptable answers here were sweet potato casserole, stuffing, or in the South, dressing. But mac and cheese and biscuits are not correct. I'm sorry if you think that mac and cheese or biscuits is the best side dish at your Thanksgiving, and I'm mostly sorry for you because that means your family cannot cook. The mac and cheese is a child's side dish, and B, has a very serious hard ceiling as to how good that can be. I don't care how many cheeses and bacon bits you throw in there. It is still mac and cheese, and I can easily reproduce that for $1.50 with a packet of dust and water and a microwave. Stuffing is amazing in terms of texture, the amount of spices and varieties and flavors that you can go to make that. Sweet potato casserole, again, a amazing dish. Biscuits, for shame, America. Get your Thanksgiving side dishes together.
Well, to bookend that, I know there's some folks from the South. Having a stepmother that spent 14 years in South Carolina, I know that there are some folks in the South that would disagree with you there, and that could make up a mean mac and cheese and some mean biscuits. But I don't want to drag this on any further, so we will leave it at that. But Sean, since I deferred to you for the ending outro of the quiz and your 30 seconds of screen time, FaceTime rather, you get to do the outro of the show as well. Yes. Or at least the start.
So that's it for this episode. My name is Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien 81. That's SeanObrien 81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien _81. You can find my stats work at Tableau at bit.ly/SO81-Tableau, capital TABLEAU. After, work slows down a little bit here now that some things are over, I plan to evaluate the point shares model and look for some improvements, some tweaks to make it better, including trying to incorporate some shot location data from the AHL website if that's possible, as well as build some scrapers to update that in a more timely fashion. Corey, where can people find your work?
You can find me on Twitter at HBH Nation blog, or you can follow me personally. CSWA11 is my personal Twitter handle there too. Also both on Facebook at the same address for the blog, BearsHockeyNation.wordpress.com. Those are the main spots for me.
Do you have any articles you're planning on putting out recently? What can people look forward to if they read your work?
Well, the most recent thing we put out was yesterday. We do a tribute piece to each of the Bears in their departure here. Usually we post them up once they, officially have moved on, signed. We have a couple of those in the pipeline for, a couple of players who seem to be not coming back, but usually we wait till they officially sign on somewhere else, since we always like to believe there's a little bit of hope that they come back to Hershey in some form or another here. But the most recent one was on Liam. We usually try to, analyze the Bears signings, their, current groups, trying to think of some more off the wall pieces here to do while we're currently waiting in between for the start of next season, I hope. All things Bears, for the current time here, that's what we're going for.
CC, where can people find you?
Well, you know me. I'm the AHL editor and the Colorado Eagles correspondent for the sinbin.net. You can find me on Twitter at sinbineagles. My other podcast is called the Colorado Eagles Tape to Tape podcast. Pretty self-explanatory, covering the Colorado Eagles with my co-host Scott McDonald on that show. My writing can be found at the sinbin.net. Big surprise there. Covered the Utah Grizzlies and their 25th anniversary and kind of talked about the Colorado/Utah tie-ins between, them and the Eagles and the Avalanche. And so that was one of my most recent articles. I wrote about Liam O'Brien coming over from Hershey and quoted Corey in that quite a bit. And my next article coming out probably will be hopefully this next week, more of a personal take on the Utah Grizzlies and them coming to Salt Lake City from Denver. If you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure to subscribe on YouTube or whatever podcasting platform you're listening on so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you could please rate and review the podcast wherever you are listening from, doing so will help others find the show, and your reviews will help us improve it. So please let us know how we're doing and give us as many stars as you see fit. You can also follow the In the Corners podcast on Twitter at In the Corners Pod as well, so you can see what's going on with the show. Sean, take us home.
If you like us even more than that, please consider leaving a tip in our digital tip jar at patreon.com/thesinbinhockey. Your support means a lot to us and allows us to continue to provide coverage of minor league hockey, as well as expanding our coverage to more markets. Be sure to also check out the Sinbin's other podcasts, whether it's the one CC hosts, Tape to Tape, or the Hockey Talk, 3 Periods, Syracuse Speaks, and our newest one, Cleveland Monsters OT. Until next time, for CC Hawkley and Cody Schwartz, I'm Sean O'Brien. Please dump and chase responsibly, and free Brian Pino.
# free Brian Pino. See you later.
Thanks for listening to the In the Corners podcast. Stay caught up with the latest minor league hockey news by downloading the Sinbin app for Android and Apple devices.
All sports fans have experienced this, right? Something amazing happens on the ice and you think, man, I wish I'd have been filming. Now with the Sporfy app, you can replace that thought with a click. With just one click of a button, Sporfy captures the past 15 seconds of action so you can instantly replay and share your favorite moments all without having to film. And it's easy too. All you have to do is download the app on iOS or Android devices and experience an all-new way of filming sports highlights.